Unlocking your production mining career. Welcome to Australian Mining for New Starters, and in today's video we're going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to do a longer video and I'm going to talk about the different career progressions people can have with production mining jobs and the way that I would go in the direction that I would go in to get a job these days if I wanted a long-term career. So we're going to have a look at where the current jobs are, and then we're going to have a look at getting ready and applying for these jobs, so what you can do as far as getting qualifications and resumes and all that sort of stuff. Then we're going to have a look at starting the dream job, so onboarding, what happens there and what can go wrong. And then we're going to talk about surviving the first 6 months of your mining job. And yes, surviving. Unfortunately, a lot of people get into these production mining jobs, don't last very long, so we're going to talk about that at the end. But to start with, let's have a look at where the jobs are. And a lot of people naturally look at coal because coal's going through an upswing at the moment. And the reason that it is because of everything that's going on around the world. And you can see where all the coal mines are here. We've got one over here in WA that we throw straight, the coal gets thrown straight into the power plant. But they're all in Queensland and New South Wales, and same things happens in Victoria and Tasmania with being thrown straight into a power plant. So these are all your production mining coal fields in Queensland and New South Wales. And the reason that it is so crazy at the moment is because of the high price. So in Australian dollars, that works out to be about $480 a tonne. But the problem with this at the moment is when you have a look at the graph, the long-term coal average is under $150. And the only reason that this is going on is because of what's going on in the world. This first peak here is where China thought that they could live without the Australian coal and they sent all the coal back. And this second peak here is what's going on in Europe. They're turning on their coal-fired power stations. But the way I look at it is that if you've jumped into a coal mining job, then you've probably got a job for a couple of years maybe. It just depends. As soon as this price goes back down to where the long-term average has been, under $150 a tonne, as soon as it goes back down there, pretty much half the mines are going to shut again, like they were before down here, or they'll scale back production. And one thing about coal, unfortunately, that I didn't realise until I got told quite recently, is that they have quite a strict last on, first off rule. So the last people that are put on are the first people put off. And that's why apparently people don't like jumping ships. They don't like moving from one site to another. They like to stay where they are. So they aren't, in case, production gets scaled back, they aren't one of the ones that are going to lose their jobs. Whereas with Hardrock Underground, where all my experience is, whenever they have a downturn, they're quite happy to clear out the dead wood. There's no last on, first off rule. They'll just go through and pick whoever they want to get rid of. So that's a bit of a difference there. But like I said before, coal is in the situation where it's very high at the moment, and that's not going to last very long. And once that comes back down again, there's going to be a big rationalisation of the industry, and then, people are going to be short of jobs. And so I don't know how long your coal mining career is going to be if you go that way. The next direction that they point everybody in is iron ore, and you've got all the big iron ore mines up here in the Pilbara, and there's a few scattered around the country as well, and a few in Tasmania that produce. But the big thing that you've got to understand about iron ore, and this is out of the Australian Mining, and I keep this page actually saved because it's a good indication of where Rio is at with it all. They want 80% autonomous haul trucks by the end of this year. So they want all their, basically 80% of their fleet driverless by the end of this year. And all the other big companies are the same. They're trying to get rid of their truck drivers. Well, they're not trying, they've done it. And I'm not sure what arrangement they've had with people going down to Perth, but it looks like there's been a big exodus out of there, and people are going for the pit jobs in the base metals and the gold mines, and also going over to the coal fields and trying to get into the coal mines to drive the big trucks over there. Now, that's going to have limited success because, like I said, once that coal price comes back down again, you're going to rationalise a lot of those mines. But with the iron ore, that price is reasonably stable. It hasn't dropped below $100 a ton, a US a ton, or it's around that area. A lot of the companies have pegged it back, so it'll sit in a price between about $100 Australian and $125 Australian a ton. So if it stays around that area or above, then everybody's making lots of money. And the reason that they're still making lots of money is because they're automating as much as they can. And the reason that they can automate it is because it's strip mining. All right, so strip mining is when the ore body is close to the surface. In this case, the ore body's a lot of the hills, so it's right on the surface, so they're just digging the hill away, and that allows you to use the driverless trucks. When you start getting into underground work and pits that have only got one way in and one way out, you can't use the exclusion zone, and so you need people in trucks to drive trucks. So that's the big thing. So next, I've loaded up all the hard rock mines around the country that are producing gold and stuff for batteries. And you can see how much more there is around the country and how many more mines there are. And that's probably the big thing that you need to realise, is that with the hard rock underground, if you train up and you go down that career pathway, it's not just one metal that you can learn how to extract, it's a whole heap. It's the same process whether you're silver or copper or gold or uranium or lithium or any of the rare earths or anything like that. It all uses the same extraction method, and as you can see, there's lots of places around the country that do it. So if we come back to the YouTube channel page and I type job hunt video in, it'll bring up all the job hunt videos that I've done over the years, and you can see if most of them I go through, I type a keyword into Seek, and this is underground being typed in, and you can see all the jobs around the country. There's lots of entry-level stuff on both sides around. That's for underground, so you can type underground in and see all those jobs come up. Nipper, truck, offside are all entry level with those jobs. And then you can type exploration in, and you can see all the offsider jobs come up, and also fieldy jobs in exploration. They're also entry level. And lastly is the process operators jobs, so the mill jobs. So these are all good long-term careers. Exploration's a good long-term career. Hard rock underground is a good long-term career, purely because it's all associated with all the metals that are going into all the batteries. And we simply don't have enough of those metals to even come close to producing enough of the batteries that everybody wants to do. Unlike coal, which we've got an oversupply of, it's just the only problem that they've got with coal at the moment is getting it to the right place because of the war going on. Once that settles down and it returns to normal, then the coal price will probably go back down to where it normally is. Whereas copper and gold and zinc and silver and lead, all those prices are going to continue to remain high, purely because there's not enough of the actual metal on the shelf. It's not a supply issue, it's a digging out of the ground issue. And because it's a digging out of the ground issue, that's where the long-term careers are. So if we're going to look at getting ready, if you've decided which area of the industry that you're going to try and jump into, then you need to look at your resumes and interview prep. So I've done some videos on resumes. Resumes are really important. It can pay to get somebody that knows from the mining industry how to put a resume together and pay them to do it. But you need to understand you need something on that resume that's going to grab the employer's attention and it's going to make them want to give you the job. So you need to, when you approach people that are doing resumes for you, or you're doing your resume for yourself, if you have a look at these videos first, it'll give you a good idea of what you need out of a resume writer, or if you want to do it yourself. But like I said, a good resume writer is worth their weight in gold a lot of times, but you've got to have that information on there to, give them the ammo to get you the job. So we see a lot of, with what we do with underground training, we see a lot of poor resumes come through. The other thing that happens is tickets. So people spend a lot of money on tickets that they can't use. All right, so that's you can go through and have a look at the videos on tickets. So there's a lot of money spent on tickets that they can't use. And lastly, I want to have a look at this thing that I wrote a few weeks ago. about what production mining employers want from their employees, purely because I know there will be people looking at this video at the moment thinking, oh, why hasn't he mentioned shutdown or civil or utility work and that sort of stuff. This is one of the things that I wrote a little while ago about the different, well, it's about training and procedures, but it's also about the poaching rules on site. A lot of people don't realise that they changed the rules a long time ago to say that if you jump from one employer to another, you have to go off site for 6 months if you're on a fly in, fly out site, or even if you're on a drive in, drive out, and sometimes it's like that around the live-in jobs as well. It just depends on what the catering company that's running the joint or the utility company that's running the camp on site has set up with the mine bosses. But the majority of them have got a clause in their contract saying that if someone moves from one employer to another, they have to do 6 months off site. And that, kills your chances and the myth of being able to start as a utility and making a jump to a production mining job. And the same thing goes for shutdown workers and civil stuff. It's very rare that you see someone make the jump into a production mining job from those areas. And when they do, it's normally because they're really, really charismatic. And, that's what's got them across the line. It's not because, they've done anything or had any experience in the civil or shutdown work that relates anyway to what a production mining job requires. It's just all about the, like I said, the charisma of the actual person, just getting themselves across. But having to be off site for 6 months makes it really hard for people. You can read the article, and it talks about how it effectively requires the person that you're convincing to give you a job, not to give you a job on their site, but to get a mate on another site to give you a job. And most of the time, that is a bridge way too far. So next, let's have a talk about what happens once you get to site and with onboarding. So you'll get up to site or before you go to site, you'll do a whole heap of inductions where the whole purpose of the inductions is to bring you up to speed so you can operate safely on site in the job that they want you to do. Now, this is really important to understand because a lot of people they get focused in on the truck or the vehicle that they're learning to drive or operate or whatever they're doing on the mine site, and they don't really pay much attention to the rules. And they don't understand that if they can't leave you alone to do the job that you want because they're afraid that you don't understand the rules, then you just don't have a job with most of these companies that we deal with, especially in Hardrock underground and exploration. It's one of those things that, they give you all the information, they ask you if you've got any questions. A lot of the time people don't ask questions because they don't want to look stupid. They sign their life away on the dotted line, and then 3 weeks later they get caught breaking a rule, and when they break the rule, they go, I didn't realise that was a rule, and they turn around and their signature's on a bit of paper that says they understood it, and their, window seat home. That's unfortunately what happens. So when you do your onboarding, you really got to make sure that you nail down how it all works and what they want you to know and all that sort of stuff, which is easier said than done. And that's why the sponsors training exists for the Hardrock Underground. If you've watched any of the videos, you'll know that it's available. I'll talk more about that at the end. If people want to skip to that bit, they can. But yeah, when you're onboarding with any of the companies, that's the spiel that they're giving to you, that's exactly the way that they want it done on that particular site. So if you come from another site or from another industry, turning around and saying that, this is the way we did it at the last place that I worked, that's not going to go over very well at all. In fact, that will see you with a window seat on the next plane ride out. So, as I've already alluded to, it can be quite difficult for people to find their feet quickly, and that's what leads to the turnover in the 6 months. So again, one of the areas of the industry that has lots of turnover is the Hardrock Underground and the exploration. Exploration, especially surface exploration, can be a bit legendary for it. I've heard stories where they take out sort of 7 or 8 offsiders for a 4-week swing, and they also have to take an extra person out with a ute to drive them all back as they quit. And when I say 7 or 8 people, normally those offsiding drills you only require 2 offsiders. So they're taking 3 times the amount of people that they actually need because they're expecting them to fail. Now, I'm not saying that all operations are like that, but I know there are a few around, and the same thing happens in the underground space. Not quite to the extent at the surface, but it gives it a good run for its money sometimes, just because people don't know what they're jumping themselves into. The production area of the industry, they still have turnover as well, but not quite as high. There's lots of pressure on in the mill. You get it wrong, you can flush all the gold out to the tailings dam, and all that sort of stuff goes on that, you don't really want to hear about it if you've got shares in a gold mine. But yeah, there's lots of pressure on to get the job right. So if you don't get the job right, you're not going to be there very long. All these jobs pay really, really well. And if you stick at it for any length of time, most people are making between 150 and 250,000, whether they're on the mill or on exploration or in Hardrock underground. If you're in it for sort of 3 to 5 years, you're looking at that sort of bracket that you'll have climbed into to that sort of money at one way or the other. And it's just a matter of putting one foot in front of the other with experience. If you want to jump into the underground side of things, like I said before, the sponsor does these training courses, and it's everything that the employer wants you to know before you come underground on one of their crews. And what it allows you to do is it allows you to approach the employer offering them something, because like I said, they really do go through a lot of people, unfortunately, with these nipper and truck jobs, just because people have a hard time getting their head around how the mine works. So if you can show up already knowing how the mine works, then you've genuinely got something to offer them. And they hire, because it becomes a no-brainer, because what they're getting is a productive member of crew in a short amount of time. So I hope that makes sense, and that's the way I'd go. If you live in a town that you got a coal mine in, and your uncle's in it, and all that sort of stuff, or your aunt's in it, or your sister, or your mother, or whoever in the family member is in it and can get you a job, then that's probably the way to go. But if you're going to pick up your life and move yourself from Melbourne or Sydney into these coal areas, then are you moving for a long-term job, or are you moving for the next 18 months? Because, once that coal price comes back down again, there's going to be a rationalisation of the industry. I talk to people quite regularly about it. A lot of coal miners call up asking about how they go transitioning into a Hardrock underground job, and they're all one of the first things that they ask is, do they use the first on, last off rule, which is very surprising. And next that they want to know is, do they have to start at the bottom? And which is, yes, you do have to start at the bottom if you jump across. It's just the way that the employers want you to do it. But like I said, if you move, if you're going to, turn your life upside down to get into a mining career, then the way to go is with the Hardrock mines. And they're all looking in the middle of New South Wales here, up in the top of Queensland. All that's fly and fly out of Brisbane and Townsville. There's a fair bit going on at Olympic Dam with Oz Minerals there. Lots of activity in Tasmania at the moment. King Island's got a big underground mine that's about to kick off again. And there's bucket loads of work over here in WA. Kalgoorlie's a really good place to go, but don't go to Kalgoorlie if you haven't prepped yourself properly, because there's just as many people entering to Kalgoorlie as there are leaving Kalgoorlie, because, a lot of people just get chewed up and spat out, unfortunately. So I know this video was a lot longer than normal videos, but I hope you got something out of that. And if you really want a long-term career, I'd head down the Hardrock side of things, either in the processing plant, the exploration, or on the as one of the production jobs in an underground crew. That would be the way to go. I know a lot of people want surface stuff, but it's really hard to get into the surface stuff in Hardrock at the moment, just because they've got an oversupply of people off those iron ore sites. But anyway, I hope you found that helpful, and if you've got any more questions, if you could like and subscribe the channel and share this information around. Thanks.